Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to dive into the story of a man who basically haunted Russia's wild 1990s. This guy, he was more myth than man, really, until the shocking truth finally came out.
This is how investigators eventually described him. I mean, get this, a virtuoso of disguise, a total ghost, and the #1 killer for the most brutal gang of the entire era.
So, the big question is, how did a decorated military officer, a guy sworn to protect his country, turn into its most feared contract killer? It's a crazy story that, believe it or not, doesn't start with a criminal. It starts with a ghost. Okay, so for years, the police were just chasing a phantom. You had criminals blaming every single unsolved murder on this mythical assassin they called Lesha Soldier, which means Lesha the Soldier. I mean, he was the perfect scapegoat, right? This invisible force of death you could pin anything on. He became a total legend, you know? Just a ghost story that gangsters would tell each other. The detectives had nothing on him. No face, no name, zilch. They were actually starting to believe he was just that, a story, a convenient fiction.
But then everything changed. Colonel Trishkin finally, after years of hunting, captures one of the gang's top leaders, a guy named Oleg Polyov. During the interrogation, this fearsome general, a man whose name used to strike terror into Moscow's businessmen, makes this desperate offer. He says he'll trade the ghost for his own freedom. And get this, the mythical killer wasn't just real. He was a decorated military officer, a graduate of a prestigious academy. He even had the Order for Personal Courage. The man they've been hunting for all this time was, on paper, a national hero. How wild is that?
So, how in the world does an officer fall so far, so fast? To really get it, we have to rewind. We have to go back to the absolute chaos of the early 1990s, because that's where this whole story really kicks off. So picture this, the Soviet Union had just collapsed. Everything was gone. Millions of people, including decorated soldiers just like Sherbatov, were left with absolutely nothing. Their values, their salaries, their entire futures, just poof, turned to dust. The country was in a complete freefall, and you know who rises to fill that kind of vacuum? Organized crime. $12? Can you imagine? That was the approximate monthly salary for a qualified professional back then. Sherbatov, he was recently married, had a baby on the way, and he was completely broke. He couldn't even afford a stroller for his own son. The national hero had pretty much become a beggar. So in his desperation, he turns to a friend from the gym, a guy named Grigory Gusiatinsky. Now this guy was a former KGB lieutenant, but secretly he was also a leader in a major gang. He offers Sherbatov a job as a bodyguard. And you know, for an ex-military guy back then, that was a pretty common path. It must have felt like a total lifeline. Yeah, but here's the thing. It wasn't a real job offer. It was a trap. It was a whole setup involving a supposedly lost bag of weapons. And just like that, Sherbatov was completely cornered. Gusiatinsky laid it out for him. You either return the weapons, pay this impossible sum of money, or you eliminate a rival. And if he refused, well, they'd go after his wife and his newborn son. I mean, what an impossible choice. Become a killer or watch your family die. So, forced into this corner, he had to act. But Sherbatov didn't just become another killer. No, he completely revolutionized the craft. He took all that military precision, all that officer's training, and applied it to the criminal world in a way that, well, nobody had ever seen before. For his very first hit, he doesn't go for pistols or rifles. Nope, he chooses a shoulder-fired rocket launcher, a freaking grenade launcher, and he plans it out like a full-blown military operation. He's dressed as a construction worker for concealment. He even plants false forensic evidence, cigarette butts and hair from total strangers, to throw the police off the trail right from the get-go. But here's the craziest part. In a literal 1 in a million chance, the target survives. The guy, Fomin, he drops his phone and bends down to pick it up at the exact moment the rocket screams right through the space where his head had been just seconds before. Unbelievable. Sherbatov thought he was a dead man for failing, but the gang bosses, they were absolutely blown away. They called it Patsansky, which basically means like a real gangster. The sheer audacity of it, right? Using a grenade launcher in downtown Moscow, it made him an instant star in the underworld. He became, and I love this phrase, the new legislator of bandit fashion. Suddenly, every gang wanted a weapon like that, and every single gangster wanted a killer just like him.
And of course, with that kind of fame came a fortune. He was put on staff, given a life-changing salary, $2,500 a month, He could finally provide for his family, buy that stroller, live a life of comfort. But the moral cost, well, it was immense, and it was about to get a whole lot higher.
So how did he live with himself? He justified it, right? He told himself he was only taking out other criminals, just scumbags who deserved it. But the reality was brutal. His next job involved a car bomb. There was a mistake with the timer. It detonated late, and the shrapnel, it hit two little girls who were just playing nearby. One of the girls died, instantly. Her sister survived, but she has to live with those scars forever. She's the one who said, "Young people shouldn't die. You can't blow people up." And for his part, Sherbatov claims he only found out about this innocent victim years and years later during his trial. So for a solid decade, Sherbatov operates as the gang's ghost. His identity is this closely guarded secret. His methods are always evolving. New disguises, meticulous planning for every single job. But the world he was living in, it was built on betrayal and violence. It was always destined to collapse. And it started to fall apart pretty quickly. After the gang's original leader gets blown up in a car bomb, this brutal power struggle just explodes. The gang literally starts to eat itself from the inside out. Sherbatov was even ordered to assassinate Gusiakinsky. Yeah, the very same guy who trapped him in this life in the first place. One by one, the leaders were either getting arrested or getting killed. By the early 2000s, Sherbatov had just faded away. He'd retired, was living a quiet life as a construction worker. But in the end, he wasn't brought down by a bullet or some brilliant detective work. Nope, he was brought down by betrayal from the very gangsters he had served. He was finally caught in 2006, just visiting his sick father in the hospital. When his trial finally came, he cooperated. He cooperated fully. He detailed every single crime, meticulously explaining each one, basically arguing that he was just a soldier following orders in a war he never even chose to be in. Now, while most of the gang's leadership got life in prison, the jury gave Sherbatov 23 years. As you can imagine, a sentence that many of the victims felt was just way too lenient. So what's he doing now? Well, today, he's an author and a husband, living this strange new life behind bars. He found religion, started writing his memoirs, which actually became bestsellers. They have a real cult following, and he even got married to a pathologist who was studying him for her research. He's set to be released in the coming years. And all of this leaves us with this one big, lingering question, doesn't it? Was Alexei Sherbatov just a product of his time? A man forced into becoming a monster by the total collapse of his country? A good soldier whose skills were just tragically repurposed by circumstance? Or was the killer always there, just waiting beneath the surface of the uniform?